In this Blender tutorial, I will demonstrate how to add an HDRI background to Blender, and how to control the position of the HDRI. HDRIs, or high dynamic range images, give scenes better lighting and reflections than other lighting sources. This scene uses a sun lamp. When the scene is lit with a HDRI, the light and reflections are improved. You can get HDRIs from various websites. Blender has a few internal HDRIs that can be used. HDRIs can also be created using Blender. This tutorial will focus on HDRIs that are downloaded, and the HDRIs available in Blender. Making a HDRI in Blender will be covered in a separate tutorial. If you wish to create the beach ball scene used in this tutorial, a link to modeling the scene is below, but any objects can be used. HDRI Haven is a website that can be used for downloading HDRIs. I will be using this beach scene for the tutorial. A HDRI can come in different resolutions. A HDRI that will be rendered as part of the scene will need to be a higher resolution, but will use more resources on your PC. The HDRI in this tutorial will be used for lighting and reflections. It will not be rendered, so I will use the 1K version. We will start by viewing the scene in render preview mode, with the scene lit by a sun lamp. The sun lamp is deleted so the scene will be lit only by the HDRI. To add a HDRI, click on the World Properties icon. Then click on the Color option. Select Environment Texture. The background turns to Blender's default pink color, as a texture has not been selected yet. Click on the Open File icon. Navigate to where you saved the HDRI and open the image. To make the background transparent, click on the Render Properties icon. Then click on the Transparent checkbox in the Film sub-menu. By adding two nodes, we can control the position, rotation and scale of the HDRI. This will then alter the lighting and reflections on our scene. Click on the Shading workspace. Make sure World is selected from the Shader Type drop-down menu. Click on Render Preview mode. A Texture Coordinate and Mapping node need to be added. Click on the Add menu. Use the search function to add the nodes. The vector output is connected to the environment texture input. The generated output from the texture coordinate node is connected to the vector input on the mapping node. The HDRI can be adjusted using the location and rotation of the mapping node. The scale can be adjusted but can distort the background image. Click on the modeling workspace, then press 0 on the number pad to view the scene through the camera. The position of the HDRI can be readjusted within the world properties. We will now look at Blender's internal HDRIs and how to use them in renders. We will start with the beach ball scene and delete the sun lamp. Click on the Render Preview button. Click on the drop-down to view the viewport shading options. Uncheck the Scene World option. The HDRIs available in Blender can now be selected. Options for the HDRI can also be adjusted. These options affect the viewport only. When rendering the scene, the HDRI is not rendered, as the relevant file needs to be selected. To open a Blender HDRI, click on the World Properties icon. Then click on the Color option. Select Environment Texture. Click on the Open File icon. The HDRIs are stored within the Blender program folders. Depending on your system, the Blender program folders may be in a different location. From within the Blender folder, navigate to Data Files, Studio Lights, World. You can then choose from the HDRI files. The HDRI will now render. It is possible to control the position and rotation of the HDRI as discussed earlier in the tutorial. If you found this tutorial useful, please click like and subscribe to receive notifications on future Blender tutorials.